in the aftermath through 65 and through the late 1960s.
This idea of let's have an endless string of false flags for a corresponding endless increasing number of ways we can tighten down on population control, having more and more levers for population control. It does seem that way with this virus. Same thing with this new virus that's coming from the UK. Here we get a whole new string of and this bombing in Nashville again. It seems like, okay, now we want to have surreptitious entry. They're trying to say, well, if we could have gone into the RV, we could have stopped this thing. And so now we want surreptitious entry. So let's forget about general warrants and stuff. Just drop that out of the Constitution. It's almost like they've taken each section of the Constitution and eviscerating it one paragraph at a time. I remember the Watts riots were supposedly the reason or justification for some of the COINTELPRO wiretaps and into the at that time the Students for Democratic Society. That was I'm going to forget, Stokely Carmichael and those guys. And
well, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, those individuals.
Another classic false flag, which will get you more wiretapping and eavesdropping, and COINTELPRO. And all this stuff is really like Doug Valentine says, it's the U.S. Phoenix program. And it's almost like the Nazis said, we can't go full Nazi. The gas chambers and the cattle cars are too overt. We need to go covert with half measures that get us there over time rather than all at once. We bit off too much of the apple, and then they all come to America. It's kind of scary. All the collaborationist Jews that worked in the death camps and then the scientists all come to America, and they end up in all of our national laboratories. So it really is. I do think it's this endless series of false flags that end up with all this evisceration of the Constitution. I think that's what we're living with this Nashville thing, and you just can't believe it's happening, but it just keeps happening. Like, you can't talk about the election. That's another one. I like that one. YouTube says you can't talk about the election. We're going to eliminate your free speech if you do. Gosh, we lived through 4 years of them saying Donald Trump used the Russians to win the last election. We just experienced that. So, anyway, I know I jumped from Watts to now, but your thought there triggered me thinking, hey, this is just they've got a false flag planned for every year. It's going to be one more level of intrusion into the civil rights until there's no more Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah, that makes sense. So it's really Operation Phoenix. And by the way, the Operation Phoenix was replaced, and they renamed it, of course. But the Phoenix program was replaced domestically here. It was workshopped in Vietnam, through Southeast Asia. But in the U.S., the domestic version is called the Human Terrain System, HTS.
Yeah, excellent.
And it comes right out. It's an extension of the Phoenix program, but applied to American civilians.
And again, sometimes you can be too right, because right from the beginning of our series, from 4 years ago, we were talking about David Petraeus, and the number one thing that David Petraeus would talk about in counterintelligence, it doesn't matter about any other terrain other than the human terrain. Meaning you have to have a low intensity operations where the opposition doesn't realize you're at war against them. And you're conducting continuous low intensity operations, the human terrain.
Right.
And this I can just see what's going to come out of this Nashville thing. We should be able to go into homes surreptitiously. We should be able to spray while everybody's sleeping and check through everybody's luggage to make sure they're not building bombs. after they are the ones who pay for the bomb making classes for years. The guy who was entrapping me, Deep Uranium, he paid for bomb making classes for the West Virginia militia to get those guys arrested. So these are agents provocateurs, as they say. You say it better. You have a better French accent than I do. But when will we? How do we break the cycle? It's difficult. It's difficult because you're a conspiracy theorist if you paint what they're doing.
Well, can I throw something out there along those lines?
Sure.
I think President Trump has the moral high ground when it is realized that the servers in Belgrade also have these encrypted, steganographic encrypted databases of child pornography. And this is how they communicate with each other. I mean, yeah, I understand the Blackberries, but I think it's through steganographic child pornography, because if you open it up, you're guilty of a felony, at least in the U.S. So it's the perfect medium by which all these operations can be negotiated and planned and executed. So I think that gives the commander-in-chief the moral high ground to go in there. And I would like to ask you the question about your I think it was last week, about talking about sending the choppers in to Belgrade. I think he has the moral high ground now, with the understanding that this is a hub for communicating all this information via the child pornographic images and material.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea that you encode a message in such a way that if someone tries to crack the network and they open it up, they automatically are entrapped into a crime so that they can be put away. That's really twisted, but it's one of these things that these guys think of. It's the Cover Blacks of the world. We don't have to guess on who to point the finger at. That's the good news. I tried to think of my channel getting shut down and Addie's channel and all that and happening, and John has gone through this, and I think if we had a when the Luke Skywalker came out, and that we're going to fight the deep state, the Deep Star, the Death Star, and then the Empire does strike back every once in a while. They learn the tactics, but then there is the third one, which is Return of the Jedi. So I do think there's hope here, but we just keep needing to get smarter than they are. It's a tough battle. It's a tough battle.
I would just add a little something on getting back to the Kennedy family, which I think you both may find interesting, that Joe Kennedy, the son of a Kennedy and a Fitzgerald, the two most powerful Irish families in Boston in the early 20th century. He got a good education, went to Harvard, went directly into the stocks and bonds business, and was very astute at it, and ended up making a lot of money. He also worked for connected industries, such as this rubber company that was put together, that he was a partner with Bernard Baruch and J.P. Morgan. That was put together at the request of Woodrow Wilson a few years before the United States entered the war. Perhaps Woodrow Wilson had a looking glass that he could tell we were going to get into the war and we'd need to have some rubber. But my point is that when most people think of Joe Kennedy, they think, oh, he was a bootlegger, right? He made his money, that way, because that's what the Irish would do, and the Italians. Well, it's not true. He was quite wealthy before any contact with any mobster that could have been associated with that, and that is a cover story for what's really going on. Is the British are the ones that are running the bootlegging through the Bronfman family, through Canada, And through the tossing of the whiskey overboard and the in Long Island Sound and the whole story, all of that is going on with the knowledge and consent of the elites of Great Britain and the elites of Boston, the Boston Brahmins. And in fact, Joe Kennedy was never accepted, despite his success and wealth, among the society of Boston. He was outcast. He was not admitted into the club.
Well,
So,
John,
so when he, I just want to finish it. So when he gets to London as the ambassador to the court of St. James, he felt liberated because people would talk to him, and he could actually have conversations with powerful people. And where I'm going with this is that he's the one that would have been the role model for his sons, and it was, I think, a stroke of resentment that drove him to favor the Cliveden set, the more Hitler-friendly side of the British, the Chamberlains, over the what he saw as the most frightening thing for America, and that was the banking interests, which he unfortunately was used anti-Semitic language in describing the banking interests. But in fact, what I'm trying to say is that Joe Kennedy's influence on his sons is probably why his sons were so adamantly against the deep state, and why would Jack Kennedy make the speeches against the secret societies and everything, because he lived it, he saw it, he grew up with that prejudice that you're never ever going to get into the WASP club. So I think that the idea of the British pressure, the going back to the famine, to the famine of the 1840s, is still something. It's a factor in the Kennedys, in their view of the world, that I think is reflected in both Jack and Bobby's lives.
Doctor?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very much so. Even more important than his Joe Kennedy's interest in the rubber business was his move into the Hollywood film business.
Right.
This is around 1927, because he went there and he referred to, most of them were Jews from Central Europe, the Moguls, and he referred to them as like a bunch of pants pressers, right? And he can go in there and take it over. And within a very short time, it's not just through him, the money that was fed through him, he controlled 3 major studios. And from there, they were able to bring, this is a talk I gave right before your show, John. It's about the British Raj in Hollywood. They were able to bring a whole cohort, a whole community transplanted from the London theater and cinema world into Hollywood to create this pro-Anglo-American, particularly British, pro-propaganda. And that's why you see all these people speaking with British accents, or at least mid-Atlantic accents, and these pro-British movies, anti-Japanese movies, definitely, and all these German caricatures on these films of that vintage. So that was his contribution to the entire reimagining of what Britain is vis-a-vis America. And I think we're still trying to claw our way out of all those favorable images of Captain Blood and Errol Flynn and Margaret O'Sullivan, and on and on and on, all these individuals.
Need I say Vivian Leigh?
Vivian Leigh.
Laurence Olivier, et cetera, John Barrymore. Yeah, I think we've painted a picture here with RKO Productions. I think he did the first Howard Hughes. Speaking of iconoclasts, I think he did the first Howard Hughes film that spent all that money with the dogfight. I can't remember the name of it, but it was incredible.
Yes.
Incredible stunts in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then Star Wars later on, supposedly George
Lucas,
used those stunts in that movie, in that RKO Pictures to create Star Wars, which made it such a swooping and diving movie. So I like the iconoclasm, and maybe that's the thread we need to pull for how we break this deep state stranglehold. It's appealing to the creative arts in people rather than sort of struggling, trying to get a noose off your neck, that sort of thing. It's sort of beat them at their own game, the one-upsmanship and the chess, like that Trump does so well when he media counterpunches. We're going to need to find a new Trump if Trump doesn't want to go into media. Your thoughts lay the foundation for a lot of rumors right now around Washington, which is Trump's going to start a media empire to go after Fox and the hole in the market there.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree, because that's how the state capture was realized. What the state capture we're experiencing now, it was done through the long march, this is the Gramscian phrase, the long march through the cultural industries. That's how they were able to win the hearts and minds. That's a phrase coming from the Vietnam War era. That's how they were able to win the hearts and minds of the American people to turn them socialist. And the younger generation, most of them have socialist leanings, and definitely most of them are in firm alignment with the welfare state, as we know is a trap. So I agree with you completely. I want to apply for a position with Donald Trump's his new company. And either that, or I'd like to be the head librarian for his presidential library. I was going to say that he's entitled to a presidential library, and that's where we can house all these documents, all the researchers and all the scholars that are going to come in and document what's been going on for the past 4 years. And the truth and the history will out. That's the takeaway message that I get from Mark North, who spent the last 30 years of his professional life investigating one particular singular defining incident in American history, the assassination of our beloved president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I agree with you completely, George.
Yeah. Well, I love that long march of history, and maybe we'll make a short run, so it won't take so long. But I do agree with you, Doctor, that looking back at these past cultural iconoclastic memes is the way to go forward. I wish I had it. Why a mother's house getting shot up is not a bigger story, as an election whistleblower than one guy with an RV, but we have to figure it out, and it's our job as cultural observers to make that, to bring that story through, to get the breakthrough, to get that story to break through to the American people. I'm gonna keep trying. I thought marching it to the White House gates was the way to go, and we got knocked down. So we're gonna if not in the window, then through the door or the back door. We're gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. I think it's going to come through cultural creation, the cultural producers, the cultural workers. They're going to dramatize, write about the attack on Amber Connor's family, and that's how the message, the political message, will be communicated. It's not going to be suppressed or censored by the NATO media or the Pentagon media. The truth is inescapable. It's irrepressible. And for that, we turn to our artists, our creative class of people, of which America has an abundance of them. So I call upon them to step up and dramatize, write about documentaries, films, video games, whatever, on all this different terrorism that's going on against the American people. And if you want to look at, even into the mists of ancient history, you see that this is a long-standing, never-ending struggle. I guess that's why I'm not in as much of a panic as most people, because I look back into ancient history. I look into recent American and world history and see the same patterns recurring. So, but I've also seen people being able to rise above them Not definitively, because history doesn't work that way. There's no happy Hollywood ending where it's all wrapped up within 90 minutes. It's an ongoing struggle to the day you die, and that's just the way it is.
Well, this country was supposed to be free by now, and I'm afraid we're still not. We've still got this entanglement with the financial system of Europe, specifically through the City of London and the Bank of England and the Rothschilds. And that is a huge problem for us because they control the financing. And look at this incredible debt, $23 trillion worth of debt. I was asking myself the other day, why would anybody lend us any money? We're completely, you just look at the balance sheet and it's like, are you kidding me? That's the worst credit risk I could possibly take, to lend money to people that owe $22 trillion. So why do people keep lending us money? And it's clear as day is why they're doing it. They're doing it because we provide the muscle for their takedowns of resource plays and the rat lines and taking down independent countries and plugging in dictators that'll be compliant. We are the ugly Americans, and that's our role in the world. And I will tell you, what's scary is if we stopped doing it. If we stopped, providing the muscle for their oil plays, then they wouldn't have any reason to lend us any more money. And the air would go out of the balloon rather quickly as far as there being any real value in there. So that is a huge problem, that the financial system has got us so wrapped up that we are basically servants to the banking industry, and this the prospect of this reset is going to just intensify our being captive of the banks, and we'll be living in a banker's dictatorship with no choice. If Biden becomes the president, then we're going to have a full court press to make sure that this never happens to us, and to do that in the midst of so many people being just scared to death of COVID. It's quite a challenge. We've got a big job to take on as we start January of 2021, guys. The American people are leaderless. They don't know where to turn. Half of them have been, suffering from this TDS, this Trump derangement syndrome, and they're afraid. They're afraid to go out. They're afraid to go shopping. This atmosphere is volatile, to say the least. So I just put that out as a big challenge that we can't stop no matter what happens in the election, because the pressure on this country is too intense. We've got to unwrap. We've got to pull these tentacles out of our system.
Well, I've been given a lot of hope here tonight because Doctor and John, you've talked about first of all painting the chessboard as it is rather than how you hope it to be, right? And then John, you've done a fantastic job there. And then Dr. Hamamoto, when we have to play the game, we have to play chess, and we have to be smarter than them. And I agree, it's going to be told through these cultural stories and memes and art, poetry, music, etc., showing how much servitors we are and how this deep state is making us even more servitors. And I wanted to plug your book, Servitors of Empire, because that's what the whole book is about. And
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And you predicted it, and here we are. And you just basically said it happened over there and happened over there, and it's going to be coming your way to a theater near you if you don't watch it. So I'm looking. I'm thinking about another sequel to Servitors, which is you know, something like Up from Servitor, you know, like how I escaped Servitor in 30 days and enjoyed doing it.
Well, I've launched a new series. It's a limited series of podcasts that is scheduled right before John, so that it'll just kind of flow into it like old network television. And that's the start. That's the basis of a book. And what I want to do is get everybody who's even interested is to start producing material themselves, interviewing their grandparents, their relatives, who they don't think of them as social and political actors, but they are. They're important. We want to hear from them. And we want to move away from the celebrity culture because they stabbed us in the back because they were on the payroll of the state. Most of them were, not all of them. So we're going to work our way through this. You know, you could read the Epic of Gilgamesh and see some really some startling similarities of the Bible. I mean, even in the writing of the King James version of the Bible, with these anonymous scribes, they work through it, and there are any number of murders and assassinations dickering over a holy book. I mean, it doesn't stop, right? So it looks like we're in a real deep hole right now. But if you want to put it in a larger perspective, there is cause for optimism, but it has to come from us, not from some great man on a white horse. It comes from the people themselves. That's the message that I would like to leave us as we move into 2021.
You can't say it any better. Someone in the chat said survivors of empire. I like it because the Survivor is like reality TV. So I'm going to work on that. Maybe our charrettes will become survivors of empire.
Well, the King James version is such an amazing piece of literature, and the one phrase that comes to mind to me that I think is appropriate for us tonight is that they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and that's a metaphor for what we have to do. We've got to stop being the world's bully, the world's policeman, and we've got to rebuild our industry and stop tearing down our society with, like I was talking about today and reading articles from 20 and 30 years ago about how the legalized gambling industry has been imported into our cultures, so everywhere, like Prince George's County, Maryland, got National Harbor. Well, they got a big tax boost out of that, but they didn't get all the money. A lot of the money goes to the people that put together the deals and the people that run the casinos. And the main thing that we learned from that is that this is how they launder all of that money that they've gotten from the drug deals. And that's why they forced it. You know, that's why people like Martin O'Malley in Maryland, you know, the first thing he did when he was elected governor was say, oh, by the way, we need to have casinos in Maryland. Legalized casinos is a service industry for the big drug dealers. And we provide it. That tax revenue substitutes for honest tax revenue that would come from honest industry. Because as they take our industries down, the tax revenue to support the government, to pay the cops and the councilmen and everybody, well, if you don't have industry anymore, where's it coming from? Well, they're going to supply it through the casinos, and you're going to see you still got cops. It's just that they answer to a different master now.
Well, that going to wrap it up for me. I'm going to go home and cogitate and think about all these things and maybe write some haikus or iambic pentameter to try to capture all the great ideas. But I do. I saw Aaron say books. We talked a lot around the fire today at Gettysburg. You know, we try to get everybody together and so that we can look each other in the eye and talk about ideas and conversation, and that is a winning strategy. I think we're doing the right thing. That's obviously what the deep state doesn't want us to do. They don't want us to meet. It's the old no three patriots can meet in the same place more than three to keep us all separated. So I look forward. I look forward to our upcoming event, and I hope to see you, or as many of you as I can. Let's give Trump one more chance, here on the 6th to see what happens. You never know what's going to happen. That's the great thing about the future. And so hang in there and let's just, keep our fingers crossed.
Well, folks, I do apologize for the lousy audio for the first 20 minutes of the show. It's one of the things you get when you do live production, and I do apologize for that. But thanks for hanging in there with us. And Professor, I appreciate your patience in particular, because I know that was rather discombobulating to have to hang up and come back 3 times. So thank you for that, and thanks very much for everything that you and George have contributed to the McDuff channel over the past year. It's just such a pleasure for me, and stimulating and enjoyable. And I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. So it's been a great year, and here's to 2021. Should all acquaintance be forgot, George?
You sing.
And never brought to mind.
Toast. Yes.
Shall all acquaintance be forgot, and days of old lang syne? On days of old lang syne, my Joe, and days of old lang syne, should all acquaintance be forgot, and days of old lang syne.
Very nice. And let's end it right there.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Professor.